Gurmohan Brar, CEO and Director of the American University of Barbados, Senator Darcy Boyce, Minister in the Prime Minister's Office, Senator Harcourt Husbands, Parliamentary Secretary and the Minister of Education, the parents, the members of the faculty, and the dear students. Good afternoon to everyone. At the very beginning, let me congratulate the awardees who have done extremely well in their studies and have been honored on this occasion. This does take me back in time when I was a student like you years ago. Let me also congratulate Dr. Brar for his entrepreneurial skills to set up this university in a very short time and bringing it to such an excellence. All his colleagues, the members of the faculty who are working with him, and of course the government of Barbados who helped him in achieving this difficult task in such a short time. Let me also thank Dr. Brar for inviting me to be the speaker this afternoon. I feel very honored and privileged to be among the distinguished people in this beautiful island country of Barbados this afternoon. Now, my topic which has been given to me is development and environment. I think both these topics, both this development and environment, both are very, very relevant. So I'll speak a little bit on them. I know you are all medical students and professors. So it would be interesting to know what development and what environment actually means to all of us. There was a gentleman called Adam Smith. He lived in second half of the 18th century, 1776 onwards. And he wrote a book called Wealth of Nations. Like you must be having somebody in medical profession who wrote something. Similarly, he was the author of what we call modern economics. The Wealth of Nations gave birth to a lot of economic concepts which we have today. And it is based on one fundamental principle that the goods and services produced by in a nation or in a society is the overall wealth of that nation. Today we describe it as what we call GDP or gross domestic product, the total sum of goods and services produced in a country. There are various methods to measure it, but those are not relevant for us. But the fact is that today's concept of development is fundamentally based on what we call gross domestic product and per capita income. Per capita income is individual income for each citizen of the country. This is based on the concept that more you produce, the better the nation would be. For example, you produce 100 dresses, they go up to 1,000. The concept is that the nation would be better off. There are a lot of flaws in this concept, which I will briefly come to at a later stage. But basically, that is what development is defined today. Because this concept was based on a lot of flawed principles. For example, you produce 1,000 liters of milk and juice. That will be valuing about, say, $500. And you produce one weapon of destruction which may cost $10 million. The country which produces the weapon of destruction is far more advanced than the country which produces milk and juice. Because that is the concept of GDP, the higher GDP and the lower GDP. Similarly, for example, if you spend more on health, means you fall sick every other day, and you go to hospitals and you go to doctors, you will be creating more GDP in a country than a person who is healthy and doesn't go to the hospitals at all. So there are a lot of flaws in the concept of GDP. These are just the examples. And as a result, what we call this concept was somewhat modified at a later stage. The Human Development Index came into being, and they started taking into account what we call education and health factors as well. So to some extent today, this concept of development has been modified slightly, not enough. Primarily it is still based on the GDP concept. Now the fundamental of GDP concept is that you need to produce more and more and more. And you need to consume more and more, because unless it is consumed, how will you produce more? Every enterprise today wants to achieve higher sales. They should get more sales. They should get more profit, because if you have higher sales, you will have higher profits. Every single organization. You tell me anyone which doesn't want to do that. Every country wants to have higher GDP. Since the Second World War, the GDP growth, if you average of the world, would be approximately 4-5% if you take the average of the entire world. But in the real terms, I did some study of some nations, that the total GDP of the world at the time of Second World War was approximately $1 trillion US. $1 trillion US. And 2013, it was 75 trillion US dollars. So since the Second World War, it has gone up by 75 times. This is the growth of GDP. So obviously we are 75 times more developed according to this concept. Now we must realize the biggest flaw of this concept. This concept is based on material consumption. The more you consume. For example, you have a small apartment, you sell it and you buy a big house, then you buy 2 houses, you buy 5 houses. It means you are more developed. You have a small car, you sell it and you buy 2 cars, and you buy a jet and you buy a yacht, you are more developed. Now, how can you actually equate development with acquisition of wealth? This is the biggest flaw in this concept. Secondly, it does not take into account that how much contamination you are causing. In order to produce more, you have to first take minerals, energy from the nature. Secondly, you have to process it. The processing involves a lot of water, so you contaminate rivers. It involves a lot of fumes, so you contaminate the air. And then it involves tremendous amount of waste, so you contaminate the soil. And then you contaminate the oceans. So all this contamination increases with more production. It is natural process, you can't avoid it. The more you produce, the more you contaminate. So this is the flaw of this concept, which has been completely ignored by human society. There is a concept in Buddhism as well as in other parts of the world that excess in any form is bad. In Sanskrit they call it Ati Sarvatra Vajate. In Buddhism, Buddha gave a concept of what we call middle path. That extremes should be avoided, middle path. So today, this concept of higher GDP, which is the foundation of all nations, a politician will not be able to win election unless he convinces that I am going to bring growth in your country, that I am going to bring higher income to all of you. He will not be able to survive. This has become a slogan worldwide, without realizing that how much can we grow and how long can we grow. There is no nation in this world who can continue to produce more and more forever. It's impossible. After 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, you will have to reach what we call the pinnacle, and you will have to come down. Once you reach the Mount Everest, there is no other way, but you have to descend, you have to come down. And that is what we are heading for. Either we do it voluntarily or we will be forced to do it. The only two options. Now, what is the impact of environment of this concept? I think you all have been reading every single day. There are a lot of facts, figures, which you can get on the websites of World Health Organization and other organizations. I have some facts and figures here, which I'll bring to your notice. What we call ppm, there is a particle per milliliter of the air, which is existence all over. They have gone up from what we call 280 to 379 in the last about 120 years. In the last 120 years alone, and it's going up tremendously. It means what we are inhaling today, the air is far more polluted than what our ancestors did before. And obviously this inhaling will continue to cause more health problems for the generations to come. There are large number of lakes and glaciers have dried up. I have lived in some parts of the world where I have seen huge lakes, and today there are no lakes at all. They're absolutely dry land. All that has come down to the ocean. I come, as you know, from India. When I was a student like you, we used to have wells in our villages. We used to get water about 20 meters deep in those wells. Today, in the same village, same place you go, the water is 200 meters deep. The water table has gone down so much because of all these factors, which I call contamination in variety of forms. Then if you look at the weather patterns, you must have heard about El Nino, El Nina. Sometimes you have, winter, which is very, very harsh. Like this year, in some parts of Canada, the winter has been extremely harsh. And then you have a summer, which is again very hot. The seasons don't come precisely on time. There is a lot of erraticness in the climatic conditions around the world. You have flooding, then you have dryness, and you have drought, you have heavy snowfalls. So all these erratic patterns of weather have started taking place because of this atmospheric, contamination around the world. If you go to the sea oceans, I'm sure you know about oceans more here. The life in the oceans is having tremendous risk of extinction in the next few decades, because this tremendous pollution of the ocean beds is taking place now. There's a lot of poison which is going into the oceans, threatening the very survival of the ocean life. There are innumerable examples of this nature. If you go to certain parts of the world, you will find that the fertile land has become absolutely fallow. You can't grow anything on it because of this. So these are some of the impacts I wanted to mention of the so-called development we are having. This development is also not helping us in many ways. We feel that we are doing better, but if you go back and ask your parents, I think they were happier in their time than we are today, with all the comforts and accessories and luxuries we have. Today we are under pressure, causing tremendous stress, because there is a high spirit of competitiveness. If my colleague has iPhone 6, I must have iPhone 6. This guy has this particular house, I must have that. He has a car which is, this big car, I should have that. I've known people who have committed suicide because they felt inferior only because somebody else has this and I don't have it. That kind of stress has happened on human mind. There is a tremendous urge to acquire more and more and more. Now, there is no limit to acquisition. There is an Indian ancient epic called Mahabharata, in which it has been told that if you are king of this whole world, the whole earth belongs to you, and you are young, you don't even age, even then you will not be satisfied. You will still have urge to acquire something else. So this is what we call in Sanskrit terms Trishna. It's like a mirage. It's the desires which are infinite. They are elastic. They keep expanding with time, and they are not only expanding, they expand in geometric progression. You acquire one thing, you desire two more. You acquire two more, you desire three more, four more, five more. This is how they expand. So we have to, at some stage, set a limit to ourselves that this is what I'll be happy with. Because if you continue to flow in this race for desires, you will not be happy yourself. You will make this earth inhabitable for our grandchildren, and mentally you will be stressful throughout your life. So this is what I wanted to convey very briefly. I don't want to go long, because I know this is time for you to celebrate the awards, and I am part of that, celebration activities, which I'll be happy to join you. But what I am saying is that the humanity today is on a wrong path. The very concept of higher GDP, ever increasing GDP and per capita income, is a wrong notion. This is, firstly, it is impossible to continue on this path, as I told. How long can you continue and how much can you continue? And even if you continue for a while more, you will make this earth inhabitable for ourselves and for our progeny. That is one part of it. The second part is the mental stress it will cause on you. It will continue to increase, and you will continue to have more diseases, both physical and mental. Physical coming out of the contamination of water, air, solid earth, oceans, and the food which we eat. And stress, mental stress, because of the desire to acquire more and more, and the desire to have this ever and never-ending competition for more. So this will cause more and more stress on you, and the health problems will continue to increase. You might prosper in your profession and because of that, but it is not good collectively for the humanity as a whole. So I would urge all of you young people to think about this concept which started with the Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, continues till today. And I think this concept will either force you to collapse or you stop yourself. This mad race for higher GDP and higher per capita income is a path to destruction. We must stop that, and we should think about our future, the future of our children, our health, and the nature. Now nature is one thing which I always quote and I keep emphasizing, that the food you eat comes from nature, the water you drink comes from nature, the air you breathe comes from nature, the place where you live comes from the nature, the habitation. Wherever you go in this earth, it comes from nature. You depend entirely on nature. Nature nurtures you, nature is your mother. But nature doesn't depend on you. Whether you live or not, nature will continue to live. So it's not a question of coexistence that sometimes people say. It's not coexistence. Nature will exist. It is existence of the humanity and other species of life which is at risk if we continue on this path. So I would like to thank you for your patience hearing, and I hope you will think about this subject in our own interest. Thank you very much, and congratulations to you.